All right, good evening. It is 7 o'clock sharp, and we're going to go ahead and get started on our second of 3 nights of 1 hour cattle health days informational sessions. You guys probably know that we've got in Hinton Mills, we've got our cattle health days going on. This is an annual event, an annual sale, trying to put things on sale that we think that cattlemen in our region, our customers need this time of year coming out of winter. Going into spring, we've got things from last night. We talked about pour-on dewormer, fly tags. Tonight, we're going to be talking about automatic waters, livestock equipment, chutes, cattle working systems. Also going to be talking about scales, and all those things are on sale this week. You can find a complete listing of that at hintonmills.com, or you may have received this document in the mail. It's got a lot of those items, got some helpful information. A little bit of information from some of our panelists tonight. We're going to get to those folks. Last night we had a great session. If you listened in, we had Dr. Phil Prater talking about baby calf health. Dr. Phil Prater from Morehead State University, of course. And tonight we're going to be joined in a few minutes with Dr. Jimmy Henning from University of Kentucky. He's going to be talking about pasture fertilization as it relates to forage and hay quality. And of course, if you've got cattle, forage and hay is a huge asset to you, or a liability if you don't have it. So tonight we're going to be talking about that. We want to remind you that if you've got questions, there should be a Q&A feature that you hopefully can see at the bottom of your screen. It says Q&A. You can message in throughout any of the presentations tonight. We'll be sure to try to get to your questions depending on how much time that we have, but feel free to ask those questions throughout, and we will we'll make sure to try to get to those as each panelist goes. Again, after Dr. Henning tonight, we've got Kelly Manning's going to be talking about Ritchie automatic waters. Luke Teeple's going to be talking about Preferred equipment, and Kevin Robinson's going to be talking about Tru-Test scales. So we're going to start off with some information that we think is applicable to all cattlemen. And then again, we're going to spend a little less time, but break it down into components, talking about different products that are on sale. I do want to remind you guys, if you're joining us tonight, that we are recording. So we will we'll be using this for other functions after this event is over. We'll be using it on our social media. So just want to make you aware of that you are recording. And again, hope that you guys will have questions, make this as interactive as possible, and we'll field those questions, give those to Dr. Henning at the end. But with that said, we want to turn it over to our good friend. He's always been a great help to us, our good friend, Dr. Jimmy Henning, who has got a great presentation tonight. Jimmy, thank you for being here. And I'm going to turn things over to you for a little bit.
Okay, Adam, thank you very much. And it's my pleasure to be here. What I would like to do is jump right into the slides. Give me just a moment here to get this pulled up. Okay, there we go. Now, all right, so a lot of things that you learn in life, you learn the hard way. And I've learned plenty of lessons about pasture fertilization the hard way. But tonight I want to talk about fertilizing pasture and hay fields as it relates to yield and quality. And when we set this up, and actually we've been planning this for a while, we didn't really anticipate how timely this topic might be in light of the change in prices for some of these nutrients. So tonight we'll talk about some principles, but we will also end with some strategies that can help you stretch your fertilizer dollar and try to stay within your budget. So let's get started. Here's the roadmap, if you will, for the next 20 minutes or so or less. I want to talk about developing a soil fertility strategy based on how likely you are to get an economic response. I'll also want to talk about how hay feeding can save some dollars. And then lastly, how do we know if we've got enough legume so we don't need that fertilizer in on our mixed stands or fertilizer nitrogen? And you know, the part that we just have to start with is soil testing pastures. I could write you out a plan if I didn't have a soil test, but I guarantee you it would cost you more than if you had that soil test. So soil test is going to tell us quite a few things, some key things. It's going to tell us about the acidity of your soil. It's going to tell us about the nutrient levels. So particularly, we're going to look at the pH number. the phosphorus number and the potash number. It doesn't really tell us much about nitrogen. We have to do that based on the crop we're growing and the likely response and the time of the year. And of course, soil testing just provides us a baseline. And no test, it is just a guess. We need to sample every 2 to 3 years. For hay fields or for really high intensive cropping, sampling every year is sometimes in order. We only go down to a depth of 3 or 4 inches because that's the way our tests are calibrated at UK, where we run the soil samples. And again, we can't really have a strategy unless we have this information. You're going to get some recommendations on a soil test for the major soil amendments at the very least. If you need limestone to adjust the pH, you're going to get that number. Limestone or pH adjustment is crucial because the pH of your soil will affect both the ability of a legume to fix nitrogen, but also the availability of key nutrients like phosphate and potash. You're going to get a nitrogen recommendation on that soil test based on what you've chosen as the crop to grow and possibly a yield goal. You're also going to get a phosphorus and a potassium recommendation. Now, I think it's really important to understand the philosophy behind the recommendations. In other words, what kind of yield response are you going to get to fertilization? And the next couple of slides will relate primarily to phosphate and potash levels. So let's take a look at what we're going to put at the graph here. We've got the yield or relative yield, and we see the arrow going up. So, it's increasing there. Then you've got the different categories of a soil test from very low to medium and so on. The likelihood of getting a yield response is when you're in this very low to low category. Obviously, coming up here to the high medium or high level is ideal. So we're shooting for that. But I think this is really a good year to think about the fact that if we test medium or medium high in a field, then it would be okay. And you're not going to pay much of a penalty if you choose to defer fertilization this year. If you're down in the very low to low category, then your yield response is pretty much applicable or like this open space above this curve. That's what we can expect to gain when we then fertilize. So I put that line in there to help you visualize that possible increase in yield. So if we're very low to low, apply fertilizer. If we're in the medium or medium high range, it's okay to defer. Now, I'm never going to fuss at somebody for fertilizing pasture and hay fields. I'm never going to do that. But this may be the year in order to stretch your budget or stretch your dollar, meet your budget, then you can think about which fields would be adequate and can wait a year. I want to make the point that nutrient removal in a pasture versus a hay field are completely different stories. We put all kinds of nutrients in a pasture field. It may be fertilizer, may be manure and urine. We may get nitrogen from the legumes, or if we feed, then you can get some some nutrients deposited on the field. But actually, we remove very little. We will take off calves, of course, from a cow-calf operation, maybe cull cows, that sort of thing. But if you look at the nutrients removed by a cow-calf pair, then you're only talking about 10 pounds of nitrogen per acre, 3 pounds of P2O5 or 7 pounds of P2O5 per acre, and 1 pound of K2O. I mean, minuscule numbers, okay? Now contrast that with a hay field. This is a table from Southern Forages, which is a great book, by the way. If you don't have a copy, I know I can take care of getting you one. But if you look at the nitrogen removed per ton of hay and the P2O5 or phosphorus and the K2O, you look at these numbers and they are pretty stout. And in fact, one of the things I'd like you to note is that we take off about 3 or 4 times as much potassium as phosphorus. And it's going to become relevant here in just a second why that's so important. So for this presentation, I needed to pick a number for the nutrients in a ton of hay. So these are the numbers that I picked. A ton of hay is hypothetical hay that we're going to talk about tonight. we'll remove 45 pounds of nitrogen, 15 pounds of P2O5, and 55 pounds of K2O. Now, I updated the prices to current March 2021 prices, 52 cents per pound of N, 56 cents per pound of P2O5, and that's 1846.0 at $700 a ton. And I did credit the 1846.0 with the value of nitrogen there that you get at this 52 cents a pound. So if you were to just take the $700 a ton and figure out what it would be on a pound of phosphorus basis, it would come up with a higher number than this. And for potassium, 33 cents per pound. Now, I want to use as my educational backdrop tonight this study in Powell County. Now, when I saw this field for the first time, it was at an evening field day. It's a very small farm, and the farmer is, he works at a town job and he relies on other people to help him with this little hay field of his. When I saw it, he told me after the field day and the county agent did that they were really just not pleased with the way it was performing. They had seeded some orchard grass in it, and I had the hay bales were out there, and I was taking a look at the hay bales, and I was looking for orchard grass, and I saw something kind of orchard grassy color, but it wasn't orchard grass. And I looked a little further, and actually it was broom sedge. This is the way that field looked the fall before we started on this experiment. Obviously, it may be fescue as a base, but it is broom sedge now. And the point is that if you looked at, if the average person looks at a field of broom sedge, the first thing they think of is lime. It needs lime. And in fact, they told that producer, you need to lime that field, and he did. And he still had broom sedge. And over the course of several years, I mean, more than a decade, all they did was make hay on this field. And all they fertilized with was triple 19. And look what happened. The pH was good because he limed. Phosphorus actually was in the high zone because a couple of 100 pounds of triple 19 is going to be more than enough to replace any nutrients that you remove as phosphorus. But a couple 100 pounds of triple 19 grossly under fertilizes with potassium. So the principle here is not that, that potassium is the answer to every question, but that the soil test was the key to picking the right place to start in terms of fixing this field and improving the field and yield. I'm going to walk through this study really quickly because it just points up the magnitude of the response and some other unintended consequences from fertilization on forage quality and composition, you name it. But we started the study in 2018. Of course, it's a low potash site with good P and good pH. We included, of course, the unfertilized control. We had the 200 pounds of triple 19 treatment. And then we had some a series of treatments that lets us, look at the effect of every nutrient, N, P, and K. But in particular, I wanted to look at the effect of correcting this potassium, this last number, imbalance. So I used high levels of nitrogen, high levels of phosphorus to make sure they were not limiting, okay? So we've got 3 years worth of study, and we're done with the yield on that study. So this is 2 years of that data. The third year was exactly the same. So 2018, 2019, 2018 is in green, 19 is in gold. Here are the selected treatments, the unfertilized control, triple 19, 200 pounds of it. And then, a lot of nitrogen split 3 times during the year, spring, after the first cutting, and in August. The phosphorus was applied in the spring only. We've got the nitrogen plus phosphorus plus 180 in terms of potash, and then nitrogen plus phosphorus plus 360 on potassium. So let's take a look at the yields. When we did not add any fertilizer, we got about 1.5 tons yield. If you take a look at what the triple 19 gave us, it bumped up the yields by about 0.3 of a ton, not very much. When we added then, took care of the nitrogen needs and the phosphorus needs, we got another half ton, 6/10 of a ton. And then every increment of potassium went up, and including at the highest level. But here is the unintended consequence. Now, remember, I went into this study not knowing that broom sedge was quite as dominant in that field as it was. And that we didn't do any attempts to control weeds. We just fertilized and let it come, whatever came. Looking at botanical composition at the end of the second year, and what you see in this graph is the same that we saw after the first year. We see in the untreated control or unfertilized control, a little bit of tall fescue in this November sampling, but 83% broom sedge. Triple 19 flipped that, so it's about 70% fescue and bluegrass and about 30% broom sedge. But then these well-fertilized treatments basically eliminated broom sedge almost altogether, certainly down to minimal levels. Now, before you think, well, I can't afford to put that much nitrogen and phosphorus and everything out to control broom sedge, I did a little digging to look at historical work with broom sedge. And it turns out that Middle Tennessee, or Tennessee, University of Tennessee, did some work at their Middle Tennessee station where they used 200 pounds of nitrate of soda or 150 pounds of ammonium sulfate together with grazing and 2 or 3 clippings annually, and they reduced the broom sedge stands from 90% ground cover to less than 5 in 4 years. So that's a much more modest level of nitrogen application, but I want to point out the importance of this, the fact that broom sedge really does not like to be grazed close or cut close. Now, to help you visualize this effect of fertilization on quality, I'm showing you pictures from the fall, looking down right on the top of a high broom sedge plot, and then looking sideways at one of our well-fertilized fescue plots. And that you can't really get the 3-dimensional look here, but you can get the sense that there are some of these treatments are just solid broom sedge, and then you've got these well-fertilized treatments where you've got much more fescue. And here was a surprise. Of course, we've got a whole range of treatments in this study, and there are some no nitrogen treatments that have phosphorus and potassium, right? Much like you would do if you were raising clover, if that was your intent. Now, clover had not been seeded in this field for at least 10 years. They could remember back 10 years, and so probably not even then. But look at the volunteer red clover that we had in July, based on, this is the photograph of July in one of those plots that had P and K. When we didn't add any, we had a little bit of volunteer clover, and this is 2018 and 2019. The blue is 2019, the gold is 2018. And look how prevalent clover was in the second year after we had second year of fertilization, okay? And those plots, even though, rated we're at 65%, some of them look like 100% clover in terms of by stand. Now you can see, if you could look really closely at this picture, that you can see that even the broom sedge sticking up through there, it's green and starting to elongate, and get tall. But you can tell the difference in quality that this much clover is going to make in that fescue broom sedge field. Now, it wouldn't be real world if we didn't talk about the cost a little bit. That 180 treatment cost in today's dollars $175 an acre, okay? That is staggering. And you might say, and you would be probably right, that I cannot afford that, and I'm not going to argue that. But I do want to put up on the other side against this cost the benefits that we saw. We got 2 tons per acre additional yield. We didn't measure the forage quality, but you can tell that broom sedge, which is about 40% digestible and 4% protein. In other words, it has no nutritive value in that when it's tall and brown in the fall. compared to fescue, which has probably 18 to 20% protein and highly digestible in the fall. That's a significant bump in both yield and quality. And, you know, since there are no herbicides to control broom sedge, we were able to, in effect, control broom sedge, or at least manage it, without losing a year of production. If you were to tear that field up and start over, you give up the revenue from that field for a year. And that's a very costly thing. I think you can recognize that. So, you know, it's a trade-off. Can you afford to do the 180, 40, 180 treatment? Probably not. But I can tell you, and we'll talk about this a little later, there are some sweet spots, in other words, economic sweet spots, where you can talk about where your return on investment is going to be the greatest. Okay, so I cannot afford that kind of fertilizer bill. Not going to argue that point whatsoever, but here's what you can do. How you feed your hay can spread your fertilizer dollar, no pun intended. If you assume that ton of hay costs, it contains 45 pounds of N, 15 pounds of P2O5, 55 pounds of K2O, and then in October prices, it was worth $39 a ton. That ton of hay had $39 worth of fertilizer in it. At 2021 prices, that is now $50. So if you can unroll your hay and spread it out across the field and unroll hay on the low fertility areas, then you're going to be able to spread the manure and urine out and move those $50 worth of free nutrients, if you want to think of it that way, or at least bonus nutrients, onto those hay fields or pasture fields. We've done the same thing with bale grazing and significantly increased the phosphate or the phosphorus numbers and the potassium numbers in some low fertility fields. And the final point I want to make tonight is, do I have enough clover? Because we think of clover as supplying nitrogen, and it does, but we're always asking ourselves, you know, do I have enough clover to not put nitrogen out? Okay, our soil test, if you turn it in, you say you're going to raise clover grass, they're going to say not to put nitrogen out if there's 25% clover. So, you know, what number have you heard for enough clover? 25 to 30%. But I want to ask you, is that on a visual basis or on a weight basis? So I want to show you this tonight. Actually, this is 25% legume by weight in this picture. To me, that looks a lot more like 75% legume by visual basis. And I want to make one crucial point. This is white clover. This is going to yield as much, there's enough clover here to yield as much as this fescue white clover will yield, okay? But this, what you're looking at, is only 1,400 pounds of dry matter. So if you want a 3-ton yield off of a field, it has to be a 3-ton legume. Otherwise, you might need to think about how you're going to manage it more for the grass using nitrogen. So I'm at the end of my time. What should you do? Here are my 5 ways to stretch your fertilizer budget. Have a fertilizer strategy based on a soil test. Fix your biggest problem first. We haven't talked about this, but know when you need to use urease inhibitors. This is not a costly addition to your fertilizer bill, but when we have abnormally warm and dry conditions and rain is not expected and you're going to put urea out, then using urease inhibitors are going to pay. Use efficient rates of nitrogen for the first cutting of grass. I just looked these numbers up fresh today. The first 40 pounds of nitrogen on fescue in the spring yields 45 to 1 return. The next 40 pounds yields a 14 to 1 return. So a modest amount of nitrogen is going to give you the greatest return in terms of dry matter per pound of N. Not arguing not to use 80 pounds, and that's what that total would be. All I'm saying is that the first 40 gives you a bigger bang than the next 40. And then, you know, use legumes where you can for their biological nitrogen and forage quality. And in the long term, use hay feeding to redistribute nutrients where you can. So, you know, it's been a pleasure to be with you. Take any kind of questions that are in the chat box, and I'm going to hang around too. So if you think of them, drop them in there.
Thank you, Dr. Henning. And we do have some questions. Got a few things. Last week, I heard a presentation by Jeff Flimcooler, and we were talking about one of the things that we were talking about was the increase in Kentucky on cattle and cattle confinement operations. And so the question would be, what fertilizer value is there in stockpile manure to pasture fields? How would you define that? What is that like?
That, it winds up being about the equal amounts of NP and K, and that I'd have to look that up. It's like 10, 10, 10, or maybe 2, 2, 2, or something like that. And we have a standard figure. If you say you go to one of our fertilizer calculators, and you tell them, you're going to use manure, that's what it's going to do. And it's a great source. I mean, absolutely great source. But it's a lot like triple 19. It's a you get about the same amount of NP and K. So for hay fields in particular, and most of our fields, you're probably going to want to add some potassium to that if you can.
Okay. Next question we've got is, if we invest in clover, does the improved clover make a difference? What are your thoughts on that?
No, that's an easy question for me. We actually started doing a study 30 years ago. We're still doing it too, looking at putting the inexpensive clovers up against the better stuff. And I can tell you, if we were swearing right now, I could, so help me God, you could afford to pay $20 a pound for improved red clover over the common medium red. Trust, you won't believe me, but it makes that much difference.
Got another question from the chat. What urease inhibitors have the best return on investment, and under what conditions do they pay off?
There are a couple of types, and I'm going to mess up with the trade names. Okay, so I will defer to Dwight, Leslie, and you guys on those. But I can tell you that the conditions that really help, or where urease inhibitors are called for, are when we've got maybe a lot of dry matter material. So the prills don't land on soil. It's maybe a little abnormally warm or dry, and we really don't expect rain. And those three things will, in those cases, urease inhibitors pay. And it only costs like $6 a pound to the price of that nitrogen. So it's a small investment.
We've got another question about clover. Does clover help with the endophyte toxins?
It absolutely does, and it does it in a lot of ways. But recent research at the USDA unit here on campus has found that red clover in particular, but also white clover and alfalfa, have isoflavones, which is a compound naturally occurring that makes the veins dilate. In other words, it reverses one of the key negative effects of fescue toxicosis. So that, it's the list of benefits is about as long as your arm. I'm more convinced than ever that you really can afford to do some heroic things to get good red clover in the pasture.
And then just kind of what would be your generic recommendations, or that of the UK team, is if you were just starting a hay and pasture field, just walk us through the seed selection. Let's say that it was a place that you were starting from scratch, or essentially starting from scratch. Walk us through what you think is a seed selection and just generic fertilizer recommendation, and maybe over the course of a few years.
Okay. It would take away my diploma if I didn't tell you I want to get a soil test, right? So we're going to start with that. But I think you have to begin with the end in mind. And if you're thinking I'm raising cows and calves, or stockers, if you're starting with a clean slate and you can do whatever you want to do, you've almost got to consider novel tall fescues. The work that we have done with them says they're going to last a long time. We've got 10-year-old stands, and that's longer than anything else will last. And if we don't overgraze it in summer, we have no reason to think it's not going to be there for 2 decades. Okay. Now, if Jimmy Henning, was trying to raise cash hay, you know what I would do? I would start either one of these on a prepared seed bed, since we're hypothetical farming here. But I think I would raise Timothy, and I'll tell you why. There is a market for Timothy hay. Timothy hay comes off later in the spring, and I've got a better chance of getting it cut right enough that it can be marketable particularly to horse customers. So that's kind of what I would raise. Now, in terms of the fertilizer regime, I know that I'm going to need to put fertilized nitrogen based on when I need the growth. Okay. Now on that fescue stand, since I'm raising cattle, I may try to supply that nitrogen with clover. But I got to tell you, initially, that you've got to use nitrogen to be getting the production up, because that clover benefit on pasture happens after a period of years. Okay. And on the pasture field, you got to rotate, because that's how the nutrients get back. And there are a lot of things about grazing that we could talk about, but no time. But you've got to pay attention to the potash numbers on the hay field because of the nutrient removal. So that's a thumbnail sketch of how I might pencil farm.
We've got at least one more question here tonight. The question is, do you see any significant differences in fertility management between Kentucky 31 and improved endophyte fescues?
Interestingly enough, that was the study I looked at to get those nitrogen numbers, and there's not a bit of difference. The book on Kentucky 31 says it will withstand low fertility or poor sites, and that's a fact. It will, but it will respond just like the endophyte freeze, or the endophyte freeze will respond just like tall fescue Kentucky 31. So I would say a well-managed fertility plan wouldn't be significantly different.
And I do want to point out, one of the things that you kept coming back to was the soil testing, and that's a big deal to us too, as you may or may not know, and those listening, that we at Hinton Mills, that we do cover the cost of your soil test. We highly recommend that as well. So if you purchase seed fertilizer with us, we'll cover the cost of your soil test. In fact, we'll probably cover the cost of it whether you purchase or not. The other thing is, we can send that off for you, or you can take that to your local extension office and have them send the bill to us, and we'll cover that. That's a long-standing practice because we too know the value to the customer and to us to be able to best help our customers if they soil test. So we do thank you very much. It looks like we do have another question. If you don't mind, I'm gonna go ahead and ask you that other question before we move on. We've got a couple of minutes. Thoughts on annual Espediza for hay and grazing? Can you share that with us?
You bet. And actually, I did some work a good bit ago on annual Espediza, trying to, how do you get a stand, how do you manage that stand, and so on. And when I came to Kentucky, there were significant differences in soil fertility between Missouri and Kentucky. Annual Espediza's place, I think, it can be a good companion for red clover. In fact, we've got at least a study up at Eden Shale where the highest yielding treatment was a red clover annual Espediza mix. But it tends to shine where you're limited on fertility. So if you've got one of those fields and you just can't get the fertilizer buggy there, or you can't pay for the fertilizer buggy to get there, then annual Espediza is going to be it's a bloat-free legume. It grows in the summer, and it's tolerant and will produce on less fertile areas. So I'm a big Espediza fan.
Well, one last thing I want to chime in on your topic tonight. I know that you and Dwight Leslie at our Cynthiana location have been friends for a long time, and one of the things that as far as cattle health days that we have a special on this week is just more of just making sure folks know that we do. In recent years, we've got into custom pasture spraying. If that's something that you're interested in, it's one of those things that you need to connect with Dwight Leslie on at the Cynthiana location. give him a call. The phone number should be at the bottom of the screen at the Hinton Mills Cynthiana location, or see your local Hinton Mills location. They can get you connected with Dwight and get you on the schedule for that. It gets to be a challenge around the time that they're in the cornfields and the soybean fields, but we can work that out for you sometime this year. Dr. Henning, we sincerely appreciate your time. Very insightful, and as always, a pleasure to be able to interact with you. So thanks for being here tonight from all of our customers and the Hinton Mills team.
Thank you.
All right, so we're going to move on to a couple other things. Last night, some of you guys joined us for Dr. Phil Prater on his calf or his talk about baby calves. Tomorrow night, if you'll join us, we've got some more things tonight about products. Each night we start off with a university presenter. Tomorrow night we've got another UK presenter. That's Dr. Dare Bullock. He's going to be talking about genetics of cattle health and how to improve your herd's health through breeding. And then, like last night, tonight we're also going to have some other panelists that are going to be talking about products here in a minute. Some of the things that we've got on sale this week, some of the things that our team has handpicked as products that we think are helpful and beneficial to your operation to be profitable. Last night we announced one other thing that's going to be taking place on April the 27th, Tuesday, April 27th at 7 p.m. We're going to be with one of the panelists from last night, our deputy state vet, Dr. Alex Hagan, is going to be talking about the Secure Beef Plan. So put that on your calendars, a month away for April 27th. Don't forget to join us tomorrow night. But we're going to shift gears and we're going to get into some products tonight. We're getting ready to shift over to Kelly Manning, our good friend from Mason County, our neighboring county here. To those of you watching us, I'm located in Fleming right now. We, of course, have the Maislick Mill in Mason County. And Kelly is with Central Farm Supply, one of our long-term friends and, folks that have helped us on so many different products. Some of the other products tonight that we're going to talk about is kind of in that Central Farm stable, but we're going to start off. We're going to turn things over to Kelly. He's going to talk a little bit about automatic waters and specifically about the Ritchie water that we have all known to have become to know and trust over the years. So Kelly, with that, thanks for being here. And I'm going to turn things over to you. If you guys have questions, be sure to use the Q&A symbol at the bottom of the screen, and we'll get those questions out to Kelly at the end. But Kelly, it's all yours, my friend.
Well, thank you so much, Adam. It's good to be here with everyone tonight. Appreciate the opportunity. Can't believe it's another year of Cattle Health Days, or third or fourth here in a row. And seems like time flies, but always enjoy this week. And thank you, Dr. Henning. Very informative and always pick up stuff from you. So appreciate you being here. Dr. Prater was good last night as well. So just appreciate all the information that you're giving out to us. Not only me as a vendor, but also as a cattle producer myself. It's just knowledge is wealth, and sure appreciate it. Hope we can pass some of that on with you now. So the number one nutritional requirement for livestock is water. I would say fresh water is even more essential to our animals, free of pathogens, and just know it's a good quality source. Water will help with everything from body temperature to growth, reproduction, digestion. It's just a major requirement for all forms of life. And without water, there is no feed intake. And as a cattle producer, we sell pounds of beef, and the quality feed that Hinton Mills provides my cattle, I want to know that I'm getting the best value and the most growth I can for my animals. And without water, that would not be possible. So why as a cattle producer would we want an automatic watering system? One, we're coming out of winter here. Hopefully not too many of you guys had to do that, but breaking ice is a real challenge, whether it's in a pond or we're fighting it in our stock tanks or water sources, other water sources that could be freezing up on us. It's a brutal deal. I've spent many a time before we got our automatic watering systems to putting garden hoses in the bathtub with warm water. It's just a complete nightmare. Dirty stock tanks, again, pathogens, algae blooms, dumping 110 gallons of water out on the ground to clean out a stock tank, again, is no fun. And the rule at our house is if we don't want to drink it or my kids don't want to drink it, then why should we expect our animals to drink it? And I really do believe that. I think that we should provide as a good steward to our animals a good quality source of water. And then the third reason that you would want to consider an automatic watering system, and one is becoming more and more of an issue, is just environmental issues. You know, we're getting more pushback on animals polluting the water supply and things like that. Whether you believe in it or not, it's a real deal, and something that needs to be addressed. So Ritchie Fresh Water for Life. Ritchie, February of 1921, so a month ago, 100 years ago, Thomas Ritchie was tired of fighting freezing water, and he designed a valve that could work off of their watering system with a kerosene heater. And he was able to come up with a concept that would allow his water to be provided to his animals where he wouldn't have to fight it as much. And he's continued to develop that, or the company has continued to develop that over the last 100 years to where we are today. So we've decided that we are going to consider an automatic watering system. So why would you want to consider Ritchie? Well, one, I just told you, we're celebrating the 100-year anniversary of the product. So it's a product that's been well established. And I'm not for sure, Adam, if your grandpa was trading with Mr. Ritchie back 100 years ago, but I know the relationship goes back quite some time. And we're very fortunate to be a company that's manufacturing it here in the United States. We have the best warranty on the market. It's a 10-year warranty, 5 years full, 5 years prorated after that on the body of the water itself. Totally sealed units. What that would mean to you as a producer is if there's moisture in the insulation of that unit, then that unit is very not good anymore. And being a totally sealed unit, we're able to keep the moisture from getting in there to have issues down the road. Minimal energy cost is a big thing. I'll get into that a little bit more. Long lasting. And the one that really means a lot here is this parts availability. You may have issues with the water 10 to 15 years down after you've purchased it, and knowing that you can go back and go to Hinton Mills locations and be able to pick up a part for a unit that maybe is even obsolete, but the parts are still available. That's real. I mean, I've talked to many producers who have used competitors' products, and having to retrofit parts to make something work is not a fun deal. So then we need to decide, do we want to go electric or energy free? If electric is an option for you, I would always recommend electric, just because the standpoint of we know that it's going to work. We know that unit's going to be frost free throughout the year. The energy units are very economical to run. In our part of the world, you're looking at about $17 to $25 on an annual basis on a typical winter, or 25 would be more of an extreme winter. So it's very, very cost efficient to use. But if electric is not an option, we have the option for you too there with the energy free. So here are some pictures that we've gotten from our customers over the years of the energy units performing in not ideal conditions. But as you can see, the units are still providing water to that livestock, and that's important. And if we ever get into this situation over here on the right, and that looks like one of my waters, I'm probably going to ask my wife if we can pack up and move somewhere else, because I can't imagine having to fight that. But again, as I said earlier, if the energy is not an option, the energy free options work as well. These are some pictures from 2 years ago. Here, this one here was in Kentucky, minus 15 below, and the animals were still drinking out of it. And as you can see, the one on the right, still providing fresh water to the animals. If we're going to go with an energy-free unit, proper installation is a key to that. If properly installed, Ritchie, the data shows that we can keep that water in operation to 20 below zero with 15-mile-an-hour winds. And typically when we have issues with our waters, it's going to go back to the installation. Here's some data that Mr. Bud Hinton provided for me a couple of years ago. and some stuff that he had done. And I thought it was neat, so I went ahead and incorporated that in here. But in 2018, the ground temperature in Lexington, 40 inches deep was 43 degrees. If you go 20 inches deep, that ground temperature was 36 degrees. So if we have incoming water at 42 degrees, which is typical, it's going to lose 1 degree per hour. So at -20 and no animals drinking out of an energy-free unit, it's going to take about 10 hours, just basic math and science, to freeze that unit. But if we were at 20 inches, that water coming in at 36 degrees, it's only going to take 4 hours for that unit to freeze up. So whether you're installing it yourself or you have an installer, and I know we're rock capital of the world around here, you know, it's imperative that we get that water line all the way through from the source to the water at the frost line or below, because anytime we have a rock or we have something that we have to go over it, then we're jeopardizing the amount of warm water that's going to be provided to that unit. The other thing, if you're going to go with an energy-free unit, is we need to make sure that we get the proper sizing. These things are basically just a big cooler that we're looking to keep the water frozen as long as possible, or not frozen as long as possible, excuse me. So when we have warm water coming in, the animals drink it, then the warm water is supplied back again to keep it from freezing. So you can buy too big on these units. You know, if you're going to go with 100 head of animals, the CT2 would be the ideal unit. Bigger is not always better. Just some quick tips real shortly. We need to clean them frequently. Again, as I said earlier, I tell my kids, if they don't want to drink out of it, then we shouldn't expect our animals to drink out of it. If you're having issues with the valve, there's a little rubber disc in there. You can just simply turn that over and make sure you have one on standby. So when that's turned over, then you forgot that you turned it over, you can turn that over and replace that. The water pressure is usually a situation that we need to make sure we keep under control, keep level as possible. So those are just some quick tips there for us. So with that being said, Adam, I don't want to take too much time here tonight, bud, but appreciate the time and would be happy to answer any questions if we were to have any.
No, we appreciate you taking time out, Kelly. And you know, just thinking about some of the questions that we get here at the store most, and some of the things that we've realized over the years, I completely agree about the water pressure. What about pressure regulators? The need for a pressure regulator? Absolutely.
So if we'd had this conversation prior to October of 18, I would have said absolutely. Almost every any water that was on city water would need a pressure regulator. However, in October of 18, we have come out with a new floating valve that is actually done very well. It's taken care of the majority of the issues that I've seen with high pressure, Adam. But if you get over about 100 pounds of pressure, you're still going to need a regulator on it.
And that was the other frequent question in recent years has been about the valve. And I was hoping that you would mention that there's a new valve and new and improved valve. And but it's at the same time, there are folks that sometimes want to know if they can use a different valve. Can you speak to that briefly?
Sure. So the Rojo valve is a good replacement for the older valve style that's in the waters. It does a very good job from 5 psi to about 150 psi. The only drawback to the Rojo valve would be that it doesn't quite replenish as fast as a Ritchie valve will, and we never want the animals to stand there waiting on water. So that's why I always try to encourage us to stick with the Ritchie valve, just because they are designed to be able to replenish that tank faster than the valve can fill it up.
Well, I will say that I saw those winter pictures, and I couldn't help but think that those looked like those were not my pictures, but that did look like my farm this winter. And it was good to see that Ritchie keeps the water going despite the elements. So, Kelly, thank you very much. Thanks for all you do.
Yes,
we've got Ritchie Waters on sale this week for Cattle Health Days, all 5 locations throughout this week through Saturday. And speaking of sale prices, we've got 2 more products we're going to talk about briefly tonight. Next up is Luke Teeple. It's going to say it might say Kevin Robinson on your screen. It does mine, but Luke Teeple from Prefert and Kevin Robinson from Datamars, which is going to be Tru-Test scales. They're at the same location tonight, sharing the same video. I'm going to turn things over to Luke. Luke, thanks for being here. We're going to talk a little bit about Prefert equipment, one of our favorite brands, manufactured in Mount Pleasant, Texas. And I believe Luke has a video for us that he's going to get us started with here in a minute. Thanks for being here, Luke.
Thank you for having me. Thanks for everybody who's coming out tonight, participating for this. First thing we'll bring up is safety. Any of this is cheaper than a helicopter ride, ambulance ride, ER trip, anything like that. So, if you're thinking about cost on this, just think that the price of this is a whole lot cheaper than any of that. Second of all, the thing brought up making it easier on everybody is where you can be able to vaccinate your cattle, weigh them to be able to make sure you're getting the right worm dose, or if you're having to treat something for the antibiotic, that you're being able to give it the right dosage. And then also, if you're using our equipment, if you're running a registered or a cow-calf operation, to be able to AI set up for breeding. And so you're able to do a lot of things with our products. So it's, we've had a guy at the farm machinery show buy a pouch cage one year. Get right in a minute. He said, my vet told me if I didn't have one of these next time, it wasn't coming. So, the vets really appreciate being able to have your cattle up in an easy matter and safe to be able for them to work. The video that you're going to watch shows our new sweep. And it also refers to a fence that we make. You can find any of our products on prefert.com, but like I said, this fence it's brought up, but it's not shown in this, but I believe we're ready to watch the video.
Hi, my name is Cody Duncan, Key Accounts Manager here at Prefert Manufacturing. Coming to you virtually today from the Prefert Ranch to bring to you some new things from Prefert. First thing we're going to talk about is actually going to be the improvements to our Premier system and also some estates fencing that we're going to be coming live with here pretty soon, so stay tuned. So the first thing we're going to talk about today is the modifications we've made to our Premier system. So our Premier system has been a staple in Prefert's cattle handling systems for many, many years, and we've improved it along the way. And now we have the latest improvements to bring to you now. So the first off, you can see behind me the tub itself. It's a 135-degree tub. It makes it so that there's actually a hinge point right here in the alley so that there's no dead space or a gap where a head of a cow can actually get lost whenever you're feeding them around into your alley. So that has been around for quite some time now, but the new improvements, and there's even more to come later, are to the alley itself. So the alley itself, you'll see now there's no longer any more chains. So the Premier system used to all be chains on every part of it, every component. Now we've moved it all to a simpler pin design, which is going to help setting it up at stores, but also for the customers themselves setting it up at home. You'll see right here, we still have our same quadriform design like that we have on the rest of our Premier line. So we kept that feature, but now you'll see we actually have moved to this pin design. So now we're going to work off an actual alley frame that has pins on it that we will connect the panels to. And you'll see it's a streamline effect from the alley all the way to the tub. And if there's any other Premier product chained up to it, it'll all be the same height at that 64 inches. So we kept all that the same, so that'll work all streamlined together. But it's going to be one of the greatest improvements we've made in a long time. We've also widened the alley as well. So that has been a request for a while because over time cattle have evolved and have gotten larger. So of course we need to make the alleyways a little bit larger than they used to be in the past. So we've added about 3 inches of inside width to it as well, as long with the pin design. So some great features that we've come up with here lately, and there's also some more to come. So we also offer this Premier line in multiple kits, and there's more to come, but your main 6 will be the PS 13520-1, which will be the tub itself, then the -2 that will be the tub with the 16-foot alley, then the number 3 will be the tub with a 24-foot alley, the number 4 will be a 24-foot alley with preg panels at the ends for your preg access for your veterinarians and AIing and such. Your number 5 will be a same design with a 24-foot alley, but also a branch off or sorting alley that can go to a calf table or use it for sorting in general. And then a number 6 will actually be a version of system, but minus a squeeze chute. So you'll actually have a tub with a 24-foot alley and a head gate with head gate stand at the end of it instead of a squeeze chute. So that pretty much wraps up our new Premier system. I hope you're excited to see it as we are excited to start selling it to you guys and customers alike. It's something really exciting. You know, no more chains is not a bad deal. Not that it was a bad thing before, but that pen design makes it pretty nice, and of course a bigger, wider alley also as well. So of course, if you need any more assistance or anything in selling this new product, of course, just give us a call here at Preferred.
You know, they've got the chutes on sale. You know, everybody's kind of seen our chutes and everything. So that's kind of the reason why we went on and showed the new sweep. The alley frames there that he showed, they are also available. They are also used in the rough stock. So we've kind of streamlined some of our products to make it easier in our manufacturing. So we're not having to make 2 different frames. So we're able to use the same frame for 2 different functions. The chutes, you know, they're blue, you know, so go big blue. That kind of hurts to say that from down here in Tennessee, but you know, that's kind of the way it needs to be.
Luke, I got a question here for you. You talked about in the video, it talked about the various sweep systems. The question is, does that mean that are we limited to those specific designs, or can you design your own sweep system?
We offer that in a 135 degree. We also offer it in a 90 and a 180. Those are the 3 sweeps that we offer. Coming off of it, not endless, but it's pretty close to endless opportunities on what we can do. You know, if you're looking for something that's not in the book, draw it out, measure it, get it to us, and we'll be able to AutoCAD you out a drawing and be able to part it out and get you took care of.
That's one of the things I was going to mention, that I know over the years that you and Nathan and both the Preferred team and the Hinton Mills team have worked together to design things that fit. Here in Eastern Kentucky, a lot of folks have converted old tobacco barns into cattle working systems, and so it's important to have flexibility in your design. And so that's one of the things that we appreciate that Preferred does, and that they have a team there that Luke can connect us with in Texas to do drawings and to design a system for your specific needs. So just a couple points. Can you give us 2 or 3 points on, again, you mentioned that we've got the SO4 and the Rancher squeeze chute both on sale this week for Cattle Health Days at Hinton Mills, all 5 locations through Saturday. Can you give us just a couple of the highlights, 1 or 2, on why you like the SO4 and or Rancher chute in particular?
You know, our SO4 is a little bit, got a few more options than what the SO1 does, but for all the bells and the whistles that's on it, it is the most economically priced chute that you can get. You know, it's 75% of our business. You know, it's ideal for the cow-calf guy. The SO191, the Rancher per se, is works well in the stocker operation, just for the simple fact it's not as big as the SO4, but just an all-around good multi-purpose chute, the SO4 will work.
So I've got a final question myself. This is I do appreciate the Go Big Blue comment, by the way, here in Kentucky, but my especially since they're not in the tournament this year, we need some encouragement.
Either, so I guess
we need some encouragement. But what I was going to say is, I see that you and Kevin's our next presenter, Kevin Robinson, are sharing the same camera. Does that mean whoever is not on camera is the IT man? So is Kevin serving as the IT man now? And does this mean that you're getting ready to shift into that role? And is that safe?
We've got the blind. Kevin and I live 2 miles apart. Grew up, he and my brother are the same age. So we've known each other a little while.
Okay. So, and just so for the folks watching here at home, you guys are in what town in Tennessee?
Sparta.
Sparta, Tennessee. So live from Sparta, Tennessee, we've got Luke Teeple and Kevin Robinson. So Luke, we appreciate your time and look forward to talking to folks about Preferred. Nathan obviously does a great job. I know you guys have a great relationship. If you guys have questions here locally, call the Flemingsburg store, ask for Nathan. He'll take care of you or one of our fine folks at the other locations. Luke, thanks again. And we're going to change gears, talk a little bit about scales and pass things over to the IT man, Kevin Robinson.
Thank you.
Hello, everyone. Glad to be here. I'm going to start off with a plug. So if you have any questions, once we finish this up and you want to do your own research, you can go to livestock.Tru-Test.com and you can review all of our different scale components and items that might work for you. You can also, at your leisure, review some of what they will do and some of the specs for those units. We do have a PowerPoint tonight to kind of cover a few items. We're going to go through this, not get too in depth, but give you a good overview and a good feel for the different components that we have. I believe Julie has that loaded. Thank you, Julie. So the company we are today is Data Mart Livestock. It's a group of different products that's all about managing livestock. We're here to talk about the Tru-Test scales. I believe it's the leading scale for cattle producers today. Next. Go ahead and skip a couple slides. So we're going to start off with the indicators and we're going to start on our entry level. The S3 is our entry level indicator. It's very good, backlit, easy to use, compact design. Limited features, but it's also the first generation that works with an expanded phone or mobile device application. It's rugged, waterproof like all of ours with a long-lasting battery that can be rechargeable. It uses a component charging cable, similar to what a tablet, a phone, or anything else would. You've probably got several laying at home you can use anyways. That backlight gives you the ability, whether you're under a shed or it's at nighttime, whichever, to see the screen better and see what you've got. The phone app is free with all of our devices. It gives you a storage place, but it also allows you a connection to this. And you see the display there, a dual display in essence. You've got the indicator showing a weight. You can also have your mobile device live and see it as well. Next slide. We start with the 7i. It expands on that. It is IP67 rated for dust and waterproof. It gives you the ability, it has Bluetooth connection as well, but it gives you the ability to capture some additional traits. You can put a couple of IDs in there, such as maybe you've got a registration number you're going with or a lifetime ID. Fast auto lock. You've also got the auto record option. I often discourage that because many people need to evaluate that animal, make sure they're fully standing on the scale and then record manually, but it does have the auto record option if you desire to use that. Easily downloaded to mobile device, smartphone, or computer through our app. Next slide, please. We're going in here, and I'm trying to be respectful of time. We're going into the more advanced indicators. On the right, you see the ID 5000. It's actually the next notch up. 250,000 sessions or 1,000 capacity, 250 weighing sessions, but that breaks down to 3 IDs per animal and 3 pieces of individual information. Simple things, breed, sex, trait, but you can split into different groups. It's simple and fast to set up. All of our indicators recognize the load bars immediately. They're backwards compatible to load bars. So if you've got a set you've had for a while, a newer indicator is going to pick up and recognize that and go with it. All these units use the same platform, the data link, to connect, retrieve any upgrades, any updates free off the internet, but it has to transfer through that link. to recognize that there's an update available. Then we go to the XR 5000 indicator. Now, this is the most advanced we offer today. It's kind of that all this plus some scenario. It's top of the line with 1 million records and 1,000 sessions, but you can split that into 10 groups. You can identify sorting directions with it. You can have a dual display where if you've got it on one side of the alleyway or chute, you can have it display to a mobile device on the other side. So if someone's dosing over there, they can see what the weight or dosage should be. You can put your own animal health protocol into this and select it, or even multiples, and set up a favorites list. So you can use one favorite this time and one favorite the next time. And oftentimes a producer may do their cows so that all those groups and weights are on one graph together. They may split male calves and female calves, or steers and heifers, whatever the scenario may be, so they can see how they're growing and trending. All this is what the XR is designed to do. It's almost a standalone animal management system. You can actually see, once you go into the data link, you can see how your animals are trending. And this is all about being a better producer, making management decisions, having the information of how the animals are actually producing, what your breeding decisions are coming to, how that's all moving along. Next slide. We're going to talk about load bars and load cells now. How are you going to get that information to the indicator? Next, please. So many of you are familiar with our MP 600 and 800 load bars. They have 2 different capacities. They're also 2 different widths. The most common is probably the MP 600 for an alleyway application. They're versatile. They're totally sealed. As long as you've got a firm, level surface, more firm than gravel, where they'll sit tight and not teeter from corner to corner, these are going to give you really good, accurate weights. With our platforms, we make aluminum platforms that you can purchase and go on these. They're very portable from one location to another. Don't have to worry about the moisture. It's very sealed up, very easy to set up. Like I said, firm level surface is the key to that, and all scale indicators recognize these load bars right out of the box. Next slide, please. Our HD5T load bars is actually our newest load bar that's on the market. This was an improvement for undershoot design and heavy application. These bars are almost 40 inches long, 11,000 pound capacity. So you're looking at a sealed unit that is very durable, 2-wire connect to a scale indicator. The PVC cables are just like anything. They're very durable. They last very well. But you can go under a chute. You don't have to worry about contaminants so much to those. They mount easily. If you've got a preferred chute, they manufacture a clamp that's easily clamp onto the load bar. It clamps the chute down onto it, anchored to the concrete floor that you're on. You're up and going. Next slide, please. The XHD2 load cell system is another device that we offer. Heavy, extra wide platforms or chutes. This has been a very durable unit for several years. It's 10,000 pound capacity. You have a junction box, so each cell has its own wire. With 26 foot of cable, you can put it almost anywhere. That unit goes in. It's tool steel is what the load bar is made out of. The steel brackets for chute mounting are easy to manipulate, whether you weld on and then you place this in onto the chute, or if you have a mounting location you want to bolt that onto, works very well. Those of us in the field, we often recommend when this is put in to put something like anti-seize, because even though it's treated steel, it is exposed to the elements and oftentimes very acidic locations. So that anti-seize helps with the binding of the bracket and the load cell. Next slide. We're going to cover readers a little bit. We do manufacture our own RFID readers. So we have 2 styles available today. Next. We have the XRS and the SRS. The 2 at each one of these is 2nd generation. You see at the top the memory that each one has. These can be used as standalone to establish a session, what animals come through, and you read those. They read all international standard HDX and FDX tags. Push to read on the SRS, but you also have a continuous option. On the XRS, some institutions like those, especially dairies, because with the SRS, you do have an alert. So if you set an alert, whether it's under withdrawal or you're going to cull that animal, then you can set that. When you read that, it's a good reminder why that animal is different. You know to pull them or keep them out of that trailer load that you're going to ship. You can also add and edit your session names, and that's one of the things you don't have as many options on the SRS. Next. The panel readers. We do manufacture panel readers and antennas, and those work with any of our indicators that are Bluetooth capable. They have a large memory, 20,000 tags, and we have large and small antenna styles. But these are more commonly used in a wide alleyway, a multi-load loadout, and really which reader type you go to is a cost scenario. You start with the SRS, you move up to the XRS, and then you go to the antennas. And it's simply a location, design, and budget decision. Next. All right, I thought that was the last slide, but I just wanted to be for sure. Like I said, I mentioned the website where anyone can do their own research. All the catalog materials are loaded on the website. And Adam, let's open it up for any questions.
Yeah, I've got a couple of questions already here. So the first and foremost, why should somebody, why weigh? Why does somebody need scales? I mean, just in a nutshell, why does somebody need to weigh?
That's the beginning question. Inputs are expensive. And if you're producing, you might as well produce as efficiently as possible. Whether it's your hay or your calf, if you're selling, you want to sell as much with as low an input as possible, but you also want to achieve a desired product. We don't want to waste any inputs. And so we're essentially looking for improving our breeding decisions, improving our culling decisions, evaluating the performance of the crop we're growing, and also looking at how accurately we dose anything that we have to administer that's based on weight.
And one of the things that last night Brent Toll was with us, we're talking about Epernex Poron dewormer and just talking about the, it's bad enough if you overdose and you're wasting product, but it's worse if you underdose and aren't taking care of whatever the problem is. So we're big proponents of scales, big proponents of Tru-Test. A couple other questions is, let's say someone has some components of another scale and they want to add to that. Is there such a thing as mixing brands?
There is.
Okay.
It's not commonly done, but I do get this question ever so often. It is possible to use, especially a major brand, to where there's we have some experience or information, but typically it requires a longer process called span calibration. And on your more advanced indicators, it's a quicker access point to get to that. On the simpler indicators, it's a more prolonged process, but typically it requires several weights, known weights, that you stack on to the to your scale, and then a formula that our service department in Texas can assist with. I often have to rely on them to know exactly where we're going based on the indicator. But oftentimes it's simpler and easier and just as cost effective to stay within your brand. So if you're putting one of our indicators out there, you've got a used set of load bars. Maybe you have a little bit of money in, perhaps someone else could use those, and you could be plug and play and working your animals by purchasing our load bars.
Some of those technical questions that you're sending to the home office, you need to be sending right there to Sparta, right down the road to Luke Teeple, now that we know he's the backup IT man. But
I'm trying to get him educated.
The last question I got for you is just, can you talk a little bit about, so you were talking earlier about weighing under the chute, weighing under the chute or weighing in the alley. Can you talk pros and cons of each of those from your perspective?
I've sold both. And I used to be a really large proponent of in the alleyway. And I've come to appreciate more under the chute, but it really comes down to the producer and their behavior, what they're doing. If I'm doing a lot of chute side dosing and really trying to move the animals through, such as processing time, I may rely more to that weight visible right there at the chute when I catch them. If I'm a cow-calf producer, I'm a small producer myself, but if I'm a cow-calf producer, I've got a limited budget, but I still want to get into the weighing game, monitor what I'm doing. In the alleyway can be a more budget friendly if I'm set up for it, meaning I need to hold that animal on there long enough to catch that weight. I can go into that alleyway and put that in place, a little bit less cost, a little bit less wear and tear. I'm also portable at that point. If I'm centralized, moving lots of animals that need to measure there under the chute, that's the way to go. But it depends on the budget and the application and what I'm trying to do. That's it. That's where the breakdown is. I mean, it really draws the line right there. Both of them are durable. Both last really well. Both can be very accurate. But you have to buy a more expensive set because you've got a 3, 4, 5,000 pound chute plus an animal tossing back and forth on top of it. Alleyway is a good entry point.
Well, we have one of the things I wanted to mention that somebody had texted me as a point about the those that weigh in the alleyway and have something that's more portable, not attached to their chute, is that it's good for folks around here. A lot of folks lease farms, and you may not have that farm for a long period of time. So that is one of the things that we found as a benefit to having those scales that are more portable, the ones in the alleyway, and not having to worry about recalibrating that scale if you have it under your chute and you're moving that chute. So that's one of the things for those guys here in our part of the state that seems to be prevalent. With that said, we very much appreciate it. We're big fans of both Kevin and Luke, big fans of the Big Blue, the Prefert in this particular case, and Tru-Test as well. On both of those things here locally, I'd mentioned on Prefert that that you need to talk to Nathan at the Flemingsburg store or at one of the other locations. They'll connect you with him. Or same on the Tru-Test scales. Nathan is our point man on anything that is equipment related. He's been handling those things for us for a long time. Does a great job. Again, we've got both Prefert and Tru-Test, as well as Ritchie waters on sale, many other things. Go to hintonmills.com and check those out. But Kevin, Luke, thank you guys for joining us. We appreciate it very much, and look forward to a time when we can get together and meet again in person soon.
Absolutely. Thank y'all.
All right, folks, thanks for sticking around tonight. We went a little bit over, but we sincerely appreciate you guys being here for night 2 of the Hinton Mills Cattle Health Days for our informational, online informational sessions. Again, tomorrow, our final night, will be here. Don't forget, tomorrow night at 7 o'clock, we're going to have same format. We'll have a presenter that'll go 25 minutes from the university. Tomorrow will be Dr. Dara Bullock from University of Kentucky. He's going to be talking about the genetics of cattle health and how to improve your herd's health through breeding. And then we're going to turn things over, talk about a few products. We're going to get into the feed through products, going to be talking about MGA and Matchmaker cubes, talking about Rumensin, fly control, and breeder mineral, and also talking about 10G probiotics. So come back and see us tomorrow. Use the same link that you did today, or go to hintonmills.com. If you don't mind, please share this information. If this was helpful information to you, share about tomorrow night's event. And again, thanks for tuning in. We appreciate you and look forward to seeing you soon. Bye.